Hi everybody, McKenna Pruitt here. I have just started doing some research. I'm a major science and history and just learning in general nerd. So knowing that Plexus is coming out with a new product has given me such a fun opportunity to learn all I can about it. But really I have just barely started researching on hemp and CBD, just have barely scratched the surface, and I was excited to get to come and share all of my findings with you guys. But in light of these opportunities we have had lately, where we're actually going to get to try the prototype before it's even released to the market in the fall, made me know I had to come to you straight away. So I'm in my gym clothes in my closet, and we're going to chat today about just the history, the backstory. It is so important. I know so many of us are from a faith background, and CBD and hemp have a stigma attached to them. And Plexus has really given us a good head start in knowing how to educate people about this and educate ourselves and to understand why there is a stigma, how we can kind of break through that and educate ourselves as well. So first and foremost, I want to start out by saying that in the cannabis family, you have marijuana and you have hemp. And this entire video and everything Plexus will be dealing with is only with hemp. There's not ever any time that we will be talking about marijuana or that Plexus would be touching marijuana. That is illegal. That is a very high compound of THC. That's the psychoactive part. That's what gets you high. Yes, I know it has taken me years to understand all of the lingo and the legislation, and honestly, I still don't understand it all. So there's marijuana. It can get you high, and yes, even that has some medical benefits. There are times, different conditions that people can take marijuana and have it help their health conditions. It still gets you high. It's still illegal to use recreationally. And it still has that THC in it. That's medical marijuana. That's not even what we're talking about. All we are talking about with Plexus related product releases, and in this video, all we're touching is hemp. Hemp has a very, very small amount of that compound that would make you high, so that there's no chance of it making you high. That has been removed. So in the cannabis family, yes, these two plants are similar, but one has been bred and kind of honed for that psychoactive compound to be high, and the other one has been bred for the medicinal qualities to be high and remove that THC from being an issue. And so I want to talk about all the way back to the beginning of our history, the hemp plant. So now we're done with marijuana, not talking about that again today, but the hemp plant has a very cool central part to our American history. And so I was researching a little bit about that. In the colonial times, it was actually a requirement. If you owned a plantation or a farm, you were required by the British government, the king, that you had to grow hemp on your farm. It was that crucial to the shipping industry. Ropes and the sails and different compounds being made out of the hemp were absolutely crucial to the economy and to the shipping industry, making ships and keeping all of that going. And so it was crucial. It was so important that it actually was a form of currency in the early days of our country. I don't know if you knew that. You could go to a store, and if you didn't have actual cash on you, you could take some of your hemp plants and you could pay with that. It was a form of payment because it was that valuable. So many uses. And it was said that probably our first flags were probably made from fabric that came from hemp plants. Just really cool, central to our history. And I don't know if you knew this, but the word canvas, you know where that comes from? From the root of the word cannabis. Ta-da! So lots of great uses. And what's really sad is because they didn't know a lot about this plant, it was beginning to be studied kind of, even in ancient cultures, people knew of some medicinal qualities of this plant. But they were just starting to research and understand how to utilize that when around the 1930s, there was a lot of immigration. The economy started to become very rocky. Jobs started to be lost, and some of these other people from other places started to bring in plants that had that high psychoactive compound. Well, back then they couldn't really tell. How could they tell the difference between marijuana and hemp? How could they regulate it? How could they know? And so instead of just cracking down on recreational use of it, instead of that, they put in laws of discontinuing that growth of that plant for our entire nation. So it really took away a great opportunity for the economy. And then there is also some speculation that potentially people who were proponents of these laws were also people who supported the new coming in synthetic fiber companies that were starting to take off at that time, and that they really wanted the hemp industry out of the way so that these new synthetic fibers could start to become the mainly used items in our country, which they kind of did. So yes, hemp was kind of done away with, but there was not a lot of research on why. It was kind of a flash decision, very emotional decision, very kind of visceral gut reaction, knee-jerk reaction to not knowing how to stop the recreational use of a different plant. And so we've seen how we've had to begin getting our hemp from other places, and it's been taxing on the economy. During World War II, in fact, when we needed more materials, we needed our economy to be better. I don't know if you knew this, but the government actually incentivized farmers to grow it, even though there was a law in place that said they couldn't. So what's really cool is in 2018, finally some of that thought behind it, and realizing that it wasn't the problem with the hemp. It was the problem with people breeding it and using a high THC form of a different plant to use it recreationally to get high. And so really, if you think about it, it's almost like, I think of it like cell phones. Do some people use cell phones to do bad things, to seek out bad activities? Yes. But also a lot of good comes from cell phones, and it doesn't make sense. Obviously, the government has not just taken away every single cell phone, because some people do bad things with cell phones. And that's kind of how I view this whole hemp debacle back in the day, is that it could have potentially, had they had maybe better science and understanding and taken their time in the laws, I don't believe those laws would have even been put into place. Now, I staunchly back law enforcement, and because I am a Christian, I do support the government that God has put in place. And so whether it's a law that makes sense or not, I will be following along with the law. But what is cool is in 2018, we started to have bills passing that, yes, hemp is now able to be grown nationally again. And there's a lot of state legislation that's following where it can be grown, it can be used in different purposes, even health purposes. So that is why Plexus is so perfectly positioning itself. There's more legislation coming out in the fall, I believe, right around the time Plexus will be launching our hemp product. So those of you who may have a concern, maybe your state laws haven't caught up to that yet. Maybe you are a military or law enforcement family, which is maybe it's still frowned upon, the hemp industry. But I'm here to tell you that Plexus values those families. Plexus values all of its ambassadorship. And so there is, in my opinion, knowing the executives that I've known for 5 years now, there's no way they would jeopardize a family, even one family, knowingly. And so I know that they have a plan, and I know that they have looked forward to what legislation will be coming out soon, which is so very exciting. So one of the things that I do think is funny, just like they incentivized the farmers to grow hemp, it wasn't necessarily for the medicinal qualities back then. We didn't know a lot about it. And in fact, there are still studies being done now that are revealing more and more and more benefits. So that's what I want to talk a little bit about. And a little side note, the leading country in CBD and hemp studies, I don't know if you know this, but it's Israel. And as a Christian, I have studied the Bible enough to know that God had his, nation, his children, that he kind of gave his plan for life to first. And so I have a huge respect for Jewish people, for the nation of Israel, because they were kind of the first people to have those keys. They were kind of the keepers to the keys of the secrets of God and how he created life to work. So when I see Israel doing something that's a little bit cutting edge, I pay attention, because I really feel like they do have some knowledge that came from God originally, that or common sense or work ethic, whatever you want to call it. They make a lot of really good breakthroughs. I don't know if you know this, but I just had to throw this in there because it, I think, will make you as well really look to see what Jewish culture and the Israelites are doing. Less than 0.2% of the world is Jewish, and yet 22% of Nobel Prize winners are Jewish. 41% of the Nobel laureates in economics are Jewish, and 11% of the world's billionaires, even though less than 1% of people are Jewish, 11% of the world's billionaires are Jewish. 20% of the world's richest 50 people, and all 8 of the major Hollywood film studios, they just happen to be run by men who are Jewish. So I feel like the Jewish people kind of know what's going on, and they have a lot of success. So not only are they the leading nation in studying this stuff, their government, it's funding it. So I really think we need to wake up and look around. Maybe our nation is struggling with some turmoil over this right now, but I really believe that the truth is going to win out in the end, that things that our bodies need, that God specifically designed to fit perfectly with our bodies. Maybe there is some battling over that, but I really believe it's going to come out on top in the end. And I'm excited that Plexus is perfectly positioning itself to have a wonderful product to launch as soon as that all gets settled out. So I really think Israel must know something that we don't, about maybe a key to health or a key to something God created that's perfect for our bodies. This is something, again, hemp and CBD have been studied for a while, but what's cool is that we did not understand how it actually works in our bodies until maybe the past 25 years. And so this is new research, and this is why it's kind of blowing up right now, because it's just coming on the scene, but it's also heading in a direction where it's going to be leading every medical focus in the next decades to come. So the in the body, here's what's important to know about hemp and CBD. So in the body, we have a system, and it's called the ECS. It's the endocannabinoid system. Endo means, internal. Our body actually does produce some cannabinoids. They are kind of the exact same things that we see in the hemp plant. CBD is one cannabinoid. There are tons of them, I think over 60. CBD is the best known, but so there are 60 cannabinoids that are in the hemp plant. And then in our body, we have the ECS, which utilizes cannabinoids that our body is supposed to produce. Well, guess what happens in our modern society? We get stressed. Same thing that we've seen in our Plexus journey. Poor sleep, poor nutrition, just all tons of stress on the body disrupts that. And do you know, I know with blood sugar and gut health and nutrients and cleaning out our toxins, sometimes there are a few different ways you can go about that, right? If your body does not have the cannabinoids that it needs, if it's somehow stopped naturally producing that, do you know there is only one way to replenish that? And do you know what that one way is? It's with the hemp plant. So what is really cool, our ECS has these receptors. They're all over the body. They work for every system. They're these little receptors that need these chemicals, these cannabinoids. It's kind of like a lock and a key. So the lock is there, and when the key goes in, it turns it so it turns on certain communication systems. What it does is to balance all of our body systems and to make them function the way they should. So what happens if you're not getting the chemicals into these locks, into these receptors? Well, stuff is going to start getting out of whack. So yes, it's important to make sure our gut health is on point, to make sure our blood sugar is balanced, to make sure different things that our products are already doing. Well, we have our ECS that's actually communicating with all of these systems as well. And if your ECS is out of whack, it is going to be harder for you to find full body balance. So there may be some of you who have tried Plexus for different things and it's helped. You've probably seen some great results, but maybe there's just not like one thing that's just not quite working. Our ECS affects every single system. And so it's so important. It's one more root thing that we really need to be paying attention to, and one more thing that we can add to our arsenal of having this holistic health. So what does the ECS actually affect? These cannabinoids, what could it actually unlock to create balance in our body and to regulate things to work the way they are supposed to work? Well, since it's all body systems, just think about this. So these cannabinoids, when you put them in the receptors, different things they can do. They are anti-inflammatory, so think about that. Takes away pain, takes away different diseases that have, or deals with diseases that have these inflammatory issues. They're antioxidants, they're antipsychotics. So think about all these people who are on antipsychotic medications. This could potentially be that missing link they needed, that key to go in the lock to make their body start reacting that way naturally. It's anticonvulsant, so people with epilepsy or other seizure disorders, this is a huge thing for them. It's also anti-tumor, anti-cancer. There are studies already being done. I think Israel is doing studies where they're seeing not only does it slow the growth or help with the side effects of the cancer, but it also is starting to shrink these tumors and even maybe in some cases take it away. So I'm excited. That's a study that I'm keeping my eye on. It reduces nausea and vomiting. So even if a person is just going through cancer treatment, this is a great thing for them to have on hand to go along their journey. Combats anxiety, relieves pain. A lot of different neuromuscular degenerative disorders. This is huge for. They're seeing a lot of great results for it. So think about things like dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Huntington's, managing and treating and maybe even reversing symptoms in some of these cases can be possible. These receptors, maybe that's what they've been missing. I've even seen some studies on ALS, and that is super exciting because that's something that our Plexus products haven't been able to touch in the past. It's such a fast-moving and degenerative disease that our products just haven't really been able to touch that with gut health and blood sugar balance. But this key in the lock might be part of the answer. So some other things that our ECS can control or that cannabinoids could help with would be ulcers, autoimmune conditions, all kinds of skin conditions, because skin is something that it controls. Fertility is something these receptors communicate with. So yes, there are so many different types of infertility, but for certain issues, this could be a key, and that's for both male and female infertility. This can help with anorexia, with MS, with Tourette syndrome, with glaucoma, osteoporosis, schizophrenia, cardiovascular disorders, obesity, metabolic syndrome related disorders like diabetes, that kind of thing. So really the list is endless, and it's not, again, this is not compliant, which is why I'm sharing it privately. So this is not something we can claim publicly. But when our product releases, be watching for results that you don't really expect. Be open to seeing everything happen. What's really cool is we have all these receptors in our body, and people will probably wonder, should I get full spectrum hemp or should I go with the CBD isolate? Well, let me talk about that for a second. So in the hemp plant, you have over 400 trace compounds. There are terpenes, flavonoids, there are those phytocannabinoids like CBD, but plus maybe 60 to 100 more of those. There are vitamins, minerals, amino acids, fatty acids, all these great things in the plant. And so if you take that full spectrum plant and process that and have your oil from that, the full spectrum, you're getting all of that. And that all works together. It all kind of, all the cannabinoids together fit perfectly into that ECS that I was talking about. It's like all the little keys for all the little locks. So that's super exciting. Now, one thing to note is that the hemp plant has that tiny microscopic amount of THC, 0.3% or less. So not enough to get you high. But again, for some of our families who may be law enforcement connected or military connected and really need to stay totally away from the THC in any form or fashion because they don't want to be misunderstood, that maybe they're looking at a different plant there, you do have the option of getting the CBD isolate, which is great because it has 0 THC in it. And the CBD is great on its own. It's going to work with a lot of those receptors too. So that is exciting. And there is a place for CBD, just like ideally we would want everybody taking the full spectrum multivitamin, right? But if for some reason somebody is sick and they aren't on the multivitamin, they aren't on or can't have that for some reason, it would be fine and great for them to take like a loading dose of vitamin C. They're going to see a lot of benefits from that. So that's kind of how I think of the difference between the full spectrum hemp versus the CBD. It's like a multivitamin with all the benefits where you're going to be hitting a lot of systems versus then just like a huge dose of one item out of that, which is also very powerful and beneficial. But if you're looking for the THC 0% in there, that's the one that you're going to want. And if you want all of the benefits, all of those keys for all of those locks, then you're going to want the full spectrum hemp oil, which again, neither of them are psychoactive. Neither of them are like going to get you high. We're not talking about medical marijuana here. It is a totally separate plant, the hemp plant. So I am so excited to see the legislation start to roll out. I'm personally going to continue to watch Israel's studies on this and what's released and where they're going and their studies and just what new conditions they see this helping with. I hope that you will pass this along to probably all of you know people who have these conditions that could be helped. So definitely want to do so delicately and offering hope and not pitching a cure. But if you look online, you can see so many stories. I was looking for one friend last night, and I found several different stories of people who ALS really is a death sentence, a really quick death sentence. And there are people who have lived now for 15, 20 years, outlived their doctors even, because they started taking some of these cannabinoids after their ALS diagnosis. So many hope-inducing stories. I encourage you to read up about that. And while we have an opportunity to sample it before it's released to our full markets, I really encourage you to try and get a bottle and just learn about the history and the backstory. I think really when you look into the roots of it, the stigma was not even really warranted from the beginning. But just like there's a stigma attached to network marketing, or just like there's a stigma attached to a lot of Christians, it's our job to break that stigma open, to be understanding and to see through the root of it that this plant, you guys, God specifically designed it. It's like a little teeny factory full of the exact things that we need to keep our body functioning well. And I think it's so interesting that the research is unfolding about this plant at a time when our culture has progressed to the point where it has just wrecked so many of our health. So I feel like it's a perfectly created plant for our bodies. It's been positioned perfectly for this time in our lives, and I'm excited that Plexus has positioned itself to be able to have a wonderful product coming out at a time when it's going to be super well received. And our job is just to continue to educate people about these truths and the history of all of this as well. So the last thing that I had I do have my notes here. Just, we don't know. Everybody keeps asking, like, well, what makes ours so much better than everybody else's? And here's the truth. So we don't have kind of all the ingredient list or all the information about it yet, but it is easy for people to do hemp oil or CBD oil the wrong way. That's why maybe people have tried it before and haven't had results, because if you put it in a carrier oil, that's not really good. The body won't absorb it. If you put it, if you extract it in the wrong way, if you mix it with the wrong things, if you have the wrong amount, all of these things can affect how the body uses it. And we all know part of maybe what we've had to overcome is that the supplement world really is not policed by the FDA or by a lot of people. And so it's easy to create something that the label says one thing, but when you actually look at the product, it is not. So that there are a lot of oils out there that say they are full spectrum hemp or that they contain this amount of CBD, and they don't. So third-party testing is really important. That's why I'm really excited that we've gone with kind of an outside company to partner with us in this, because they are going to have that. They're going to have that credibility, that proof, that backing. And so Plexus always has the most pure, the most potent. They do things ethically with excellence. And so I know whatever they come out with is going to be fabulous. And with all the research that I have done on hemp, I'm excited to do the full spectrum. And then I know whatever they come out with is going to be so amazing. So can't wait for you guys to get your free bottle and to try it and to let us know what you think.